Good evening, everybody. Thank you guys all so much for coming. President Battles, thank you so much for that very warm welcome. So yes, I am the head of marketing for small business at Amazon, and a lot of the lessons that I use in my day, every day, I learned at Geneseo. I think probably one of the most important is leadership and perseverance. And so the picture that you see on the presentation is actually what they call the spheres in Seattle, and I used to work in the building right next to it. And my partner, Steve, always makes fun of me because that's where you go to write 6-page papers, because that's the way that Amazon does everything, is you write a 6-page paper and then that's how you get things aligned to. And so I don't like to sit at my desk. I don't have a very high attention span. You can probably tell from the pace of my speech that I talk really fast all the time and that I'm always constantly going. But I'm really honored to be here tonight. I'm very honored to be asked to speak in front of the alumni, or the alumna, I think is the way that it probably should be said, as Dr. Battle said it. But I'm very honored to be here. So what I thought I would do today is just talk about some of the chapters of my career and talk about where Geneseo impacted those, and what are some of the things that I've done. Not because I think I'm awesome, that's not why I'm here tonight. It's more just to talk about what are some of the lessons that I've learned and how did Geneseo help me get there. And so the chapters that we'll talk about are Geneseo. We'll talk about when I did 4 years in investment banking, when I decided to go to Georgetown, how I got into marketing, and actually, Professor Zuckerman, I'm really excited to see you. You were my first marketing professor, and you were one of my favorite classes at Geneseo. So I don't know if you remember me, but I remember you. And when President Battles told me that you were going to be here tonight, I think she saw my face light up, and so you can talk to her about that. And then we'll talk about my time at Procter & Gamble. I spent 10 amazing years there. It taught me a lot of things. And then I decided to go across the country to go to Starbucks because I loved the brand. I am a brand marketer. I don't apologize for that. There's a lot of folks today that even in the tech world say that brand marketing is dead, that it's not about advertising anymore, that it's about, the numbers and all the other stuff. Well, yeah, the numbers are important, but it's also about what does the brand stand for, because that's how longevity happens, and that's how things grow over time. And so we'll talk a little bit about that today as well. And then I got the calling to go to Amazon, and I was really nervous about it because I've heard everything that you guys have heard. And so I went to Amazon about 2.5 years ago, and it's been a good decision for me. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. But first, let's talk about Geneseo. I have been waiting for this moment for a very long time.
And who is that?
So once upon a time, I actually had hair. And once upon a time, Claire had really curly hair. And so I have the honor of having my dad here today, and I can't wait to tell this story because people are always like, how did you meet Claire? Because Claire is my best friend. Not my best friend from Geneseo. She's my best friend. We talk at least twice a week. We've been friends since the first day that we met at Geneseo, which was a long time ago, and we'll just leave it at that, even though my graduation year is 2033. We met on the first day because our parents both literally slowed down to 5 miles an hour and kicked us out of the car. So my roommate's parents stayed for a week, and Claire and I literally, we were rolling around on the ground when we met. And I remember my dad saying to me, my parents dropped me off in Indiana with a suitcase and a radio, and that was it. And I had a lot more stuff than that. We filled up the whole Suburban. But I met Claire that day, and we've been great friends ever since, and I'm very grateful for her friendship. But Geneseo was a pretty amazing time for me. It was where I really found my voice. It was where I was able to figure out what I wanted to do or what I thought I wanted to do. It was where I made mistakes. It was where I really thought about stuff. And so I thought I wanted to be a lawyer because I like to argue. So I was the president of the debate club in high school. And so I'm like, oh, of course, I'll just go and I'll become a lawyer. And then I did an internship in a law firm, and it wasn't good. I did not like it. And so Geneseo provided me 2 opportunities that let me figure out what I do want to do, which was to go into business. I wasn't sure if it was banking, but a lot of folks in my family had done banking for a long time, so I decided to do that. But I had 2 opportunities at Geneseo that were really big growth opportunities for me. The first was the externship program, which some of us remember very avidly because we shared a hotel room together, where we got to go to Boston and hear about all of these different kinds of careers that I had never heard about. And I applied for it 3 times. I didn't get it the first couple. And so I just kept going back again and again, and it was like this perseverance that Geneseo taught me was if you don't get it the first time, you go back again. And if you don't get it the second time, you go back again. And that was what I learned from Geneseo. We're scrappy people. We are not like things are handed to us and we do all of these things. It was very important to me. The second thing was I was able to do a internship at Xerox. And so I traveled 2 days a week. And it was always seemed to be snowing every time I would do it. And I would drive up to Rochester, and I was in charge of the United Way campaign for Geneseo. And, or not for Geneseo, for Xerox. And so I would go up there, and like I was on my own. Like my manager was amazing, but she was like, I don't want to answer questions, just make decisions and move on. And I was like, but I need to ask your permission. She's like, you don't. Stop asking for permission. Well, unfortunately, for a lot of people in my life, I stopped asking for permission. But it was a really great opportunity for me to just get some business experience. And that woman who was my boss is now 80 years old. She lives in Portland, Oregon, and I try to see her at least once a year. And it talks to me about like the relationships that you build at Geneseo. I mean, seeing Elaine, seeing Anne, seeing Claire, seeing so many people that I haven't seen before. Dr. Zuckerman, like I remember you so well. I loved your class. I really did, and I'm going to keep referring to it. But the other thing that I got to do at Geneseo, which I did with the help of a woman named Dr. Karen Pennington, who's no longer at Geneseo, was I created a nightclub called The Night Spot. And people actually went there, and there was no alcohol. Oh my God, can you imagine? Not because I don't like to drink. If anybody wants to go for a drink after this, just let me know. But it was because I thought we needed something on campus that was just a cool, fun thing to do, that demonstrated the talent of the students, not just to be great liberal arts students, but to demonstrate whether they were musicians or whether they were comedians or whether they were whatever they were. And we had food and we had beverages, and it was just really fun. And people went before they would go to the parties. So we did it at like, I think 7 o'clock at night. They would come and then they would go out afterwards. And it was really cool, but I was like, wow, like I did that. That was my first leadership experience that was really powerful for me. And then when I graduated, I did not have a job. And so my dad was charging me rent. So I actually got a job at the Gap because I had worked there my entire college and high school career. And I remember, and Claire will remember this very well, everybody used to steal my clothes. So I would be in my dorm room in Steuben and my stuff would just disappear. So I finally put a sign-out sheet on the back of the door. But I worked at the Gap for 2 months, and then I got a job at HSBC in their officer development program, which was a mix between like investment banking and treasury and all kinds of other different things. And I got to have a great experience for about 4 years, the best of which was that I got to go to London when I was 23 years old for about 8 months. And it was an amazing, amazing opportunity where I really like found myself and I found my voice. And I was able to be just like in a position where I didn't have any people that I knew, and I had to really like figure out what did I want to do with my life. And that was where the first day you had to give a presentation about yourself. You had to talk about who were you and what was important to you and why were you excited to work at HSBC. And so I gave my presentation and I didn't really think anything about it. And then they pulled a fast one on us and said, okay, so now we're going to elect someone who's the leader of the 42 of you. And there were people from 12 different countries, India, Singapore, Hong Kong, France, England, United States, South America, Brazil, everywhere. And they elected me. that's Geneseo. Like, that's what Geneseo is about. You don't get given things, you take them, and you figure out how to get it done. And so I think, I don't mean to sound forceful, but that's been a real theme of my life that I think I learned at Geneseo, was how to be that strong leader and that strong person, and to not give up, ever. I then decided that I didn't like banking. And so I decided to go get my MBA, and I was fortunate enough to get into Georgetown. And that was a great experience as well. I was originally going to go back into investment banking at a higher level and just work for 10 years, make a lot of money, and then leave. Because at that point, you could do that. Can't do that anymore. But what I ended up doing was getting 4 internships in investment banking. And then I had to go to, they have these functional days at Georgetown, where you go to marketing day, and you go to consulting day, and you go to finance day, and everyone has to go because there's people coming from all these companies, and if people don't show up, it looks really bad for the university. And so marketing day, I'm like, oh, I don't want to go to marketing day. I'm like, I'm an analytical person. I may not know what I want to do. I know I like marketing, like I like brands. Like everyone that knows me knows that everything I wear is branded, and I have my watches and my bracelets and all these things. But I didn't think I wanted to go into marketing. And I got put in the Procter & Gamble mini group. So everybody got split up. Some people got to go with American Express. Some people got to go with General Mills. Some people got to go with Kraft. I got into the P&G group, which is the group that everyone wanted to go there, because in 2001 or 2000, P&G was the tech. It was what everybody wants to do now is tech. Everybody wanted to work in CPG. And so I got put into that group, and I really wasn't saying much. I was just listening. And the woman who's now one of my best friends, her name is Kristen Sharp, she said, hey, you in the back, why aren't you asking any questions? And I said, well, I'm really analytical, and I don't want to play with pictures all day. And she said to me, well, that's not what brand management is about. You actually have to be analytical, and then you get to do the pictures because it's a privilege. And oh, by the way, you probably should have done your homework. And I said, well, I wasn't actually expecting to go into marketing, but it sounds really interesting. And so she asked me after the meeting, she said, hey, I see something in you. I'm not sure what it is. You're a little bit obnoxious. But I want to go for a drink, and I want to talk to you more about the opportunities that might exist at P&G. And I said to her, I said, well, is it you, me, and 10 of my closest classmates, all of whom are going to be super aggressively asking questions, or is it you and me? And she said, wow, you really are obnoxious. She said, but she said, yes, it's just you and me. She said, I see something in you. I'm not sure what it is. And so I applied for the P&G internship, and I really, really, really wanted it. 62 people applied for the internship. 2 of us got it, and I was one of the fortunate people that were able to do it. And it changed everything. I had so much fun. Working at P&G was an absolutely amazing experience, but I owe that to Kristen Sharp. And she's just an amazing mentor, an amazing friend, but she pushed me every step of the way. She didn't let me get away with anything. When we would have mentor meetings, she'd be like, you're doing this wrong. You're not thinking about things right. You're being selfish. And it was like, every time I'd be like, why can't I do anything right? But I like to go for things that are hard. My dad always says that to me. You're always like, you always pick the hardest thing. But that's me. Like, that's just what I do. And so that's how I got to P&G. I started out actually as an intern on Millstone Coffee, which doesn't exist anymore. And then when I came back, I was on Folgers Coffee, which I used to take my Folgers mug and go to Starbucks and have them fill it up. And then I really wanted to get into beauty. I love beauty care. I love fashion. I just really like that world. And so I finally was able to convince my boss that I wanted to make a change and that I wanted to go work on Pantene, which is ironic for someone who has no hair. But and so I started on Pantene, and I was the brand manager of Global Pantene. I created the first global ad campaign. It was the most efficient campaign that they had ever had because we did basically 2 shoots for the entire globe with different talent. And it cost about 50% less than what a normal advertising campaign for P&G would cost. And then it was time for me to do the next thing, and I told my boss, I'm like, look, I love P&G and I love what I'm doing, but I'm like a gay guy living in Cincinnati, Ohio, and that's not what I want. You need to move me to a coast. Lesson here, be more specific. So they moved me to Baltimore, Maryland, which was great for two reasons. Number one, my good friend Ann Irwin was living there, and so we got to rekindle our relationship. But then I also met my partner of 10 years, Steve Schwartzman. So it ended up actually being a great thing. And I got to work on what I was telling President Battles was my favorite job that I think I'll probably ever have. I was first, and I didn't put this on the bio, but first I was the brand manager of lips and nails. That was cool. And then I was the brand manager for Covergirl. And I can't even tell you what it meant to be the brand manager of Covergirl. It was an amazingly transformative experience. So when I left Pantene, my team created for me what's called a brand equity pyramid. And I wanted to share this with you guys, not because I want to talk more about myself. This is actually not very comfortable for me to talk so much about myself. But this is the way that I view brands in all shapes and forms, whether it's a coffee brand, whether it's when I worked on Pringles for a brief time, whether it's at Amazon. But my team created this for me, and you start at the bottom. And those POPs are points of parity. What is it within your category that makes you the same? So my points of parity are I'm unapologetically preppy, and I'm unapologetically East Coast. My height, unfortunately, is a point of parity because I'm a very average height, and I have no hair. And then the other things are brands that I love, like Starbucks. I love Argyle. Gin and tonic's maybe my favorite drink. I used to love Sobs because this was in 2007 when that brand still existed. Then you have your points of difference. What makes your brand different? What are you going to focus on in your advertising that makes people actually want to buy what it is that you're selling because they think that it's going to be transformative, or they think that it's going to help them, what I always say is solve a problem. And so my first one is that I'm unapologetically sarcastic. I'm always in touch. I always stay in touch with people, and they used to call me the Paris Hilton of Cincinnati. I'm an avid leader, both personally and professionally. It's important to me to have good leadership qualities. And then I created the first sustainable shampoo with its first sustainable bottle for P&G. So they said I was unapologetically sustainable. But then what that leads to is, what is your overall equity and what do you stand for? And so I actually find this to be a super helpful exercise for personal life. Like, to have your own personal equity and to know what you stand for, or to know what you want to stand for that you might not stand for yet, is actually an incredibly important exercise, and I would encourage all of you guys to do this. I actually created one for Steve when we first met. One of his points of difference is the way that he drinks martinis. But my overall equity is that, this is a very powerful statement coming from people that I didn't ask to write this for me, is overcomes barriers and always shine through. And that's something that's Geneseo. Geneseo is about doing things that you don't expect to be able to do and doing them really well. I've always been determined to succeed since I was a little boy. I never give up to the point where I drive people crazy. And I make my team at work feel like my family. It's really important to me. So working at Amazon, where all the things that we may have heard, some of them may be true, everybody always wants to come to my team because they know that they're going to be treated really well. And then for some reason, my passion for fashion, the fact that I'm a beauty maven and I have a ruthless desire to succeed, has made my brand character, which, Dr. Zuckerman, we can talk about this, but I actually think this is the most important part about marketing, is what is the character of a brand, is unapologetically Dan. I am what I am, and no one's ever going to change it. And they made the comparison with The Devil Wears Prada. Meryl Streep character in Rocky is the dichotomy that I am. And so that's the tension in marketing that always needs to be there in order to be good at your job. So that's the brand equity pyramid. And then what I thought I would do is take one example from each brand and talk about how do some of those things come to life. So I hope this isn't too boring. But anyway, this moment right here, which looks all hunky-dory, was the worst night and the best night of my life. I was told that we were going to celebrate Covergirl's 50th anniversary. I was told by my boss, who I loved, who was a friend of mine, who I would run with all the time, that you can spend as much money as you want, but if I don't see 5 Covergirls, all of them, on the red carpet together, we will have to talk about your success or not success at your job. So I was like, okay, I get it. And so, but this night was like no other night. So Queen Latifah on the right was hosting the People's Choice Awards, so she was tired. Danya Ramirez would have done anything that we told her to do. Jake Gyllenhaal had just broken up with Taylor Swift earlier in the day, and Ellen doesn't like to stay at parties more than 20 minutes. And then Drew Barrymore doesn't seem to own a watch, and so therefore she was late. And so we had a problem getting all of them together. And I will never forget my very polite PR person swearing they were screaming swear words into her headphones saying, "Where is Barrymore? Where is blank Barrymore?" And but we made this happen. And again, it's an example of perseverance and getting things done, which that's what Geneseo is all about. Moments of pride, these are my 4 favorite ads. So hiring Taylor Swift was one of the highlights of my career. She is genius. She owns her own business. She doesn't get told what to do. She is an amazing woman and an amazing person. Drew Barrymore, like, I've never seen someone that can be more of a chameleon in terms of the way that makeup can transform someone. And for me, the reason why I loved working on CoverGirl is because it's all about transformation. Transformation with makeup is, the president and I were talking about this when we had a drink beforehand, is it's all about making someone feel good. If someone has a good hair day, they have a good day. If I get a good shave, have a good day. But makeup is something like nothing else, that when you take the time and it comes out the way that you want, you just have a good day. And that was really exciting for me when this shot came back, because I was like, wow, that is epic. She also didn't tell us that she turned her hair red before she came to the shoot. With Ellen, I had to stick up for her and myself. This was 2007. P&G is a very progressive company. I want to be super clear that I never felt discriminated against by being gay. But with Ellen, they had some concerns about all of the people that buy things in the Midwest, because they were worried that she was going to hurt our business. And our business was on track to be a $1 billion business, which is something that's very important to P&G. And I had to go in front of, that doesn't exist anymore, but there was a religious council. And that religious council questioned why we needed someone of LGBT there, and why we couldn't hire someone else that could do the same thing. And I'm like, well, I'm a 1-rated, which is the best rating that you can get, and I've been 1-rated since I started at this company. If you don't do this, I'm done. I'm out. This is not okay. She's going to be amazing. And that was the best CoverGirl with the highest sales that we ever had. And so that was just a really important story for me to tell, because I think sometimes you have to stick up for yourself, and it's not the most important thing, but it is to you, and it might not be to somebody else. And again, that's Geneseo. And so that's something that will always remain in my mind. So moved to Starbucks, and I'm only going to talk about one example because it's the thing that I'm most proud of. I hope, since most of you probably live in New York, that you've been to the Starbucks Reserve Roastery and Tasting Room. But it just opened up in the Meatpacking District, and I went there today briefly. It's gorgeous. And I was on the team that started the roasteries. And I had to sell Howard on the idea of what the name was going to be, what the menu was going to be, what the pricing was going to be, how do you work with the architects, why should I spend X number of millions of dollars that unfortunately I'm not at liberty to say, but there are a lot of millions of dollars that go into each of these. And he wanted to do it, but his vision was to be the Willy Wonka of coffee. And to be the Willy Wonka of coffee, it takes a lot of money. And so you needed to get that like through to him, that we weren't able to do this like on the cheap, and that if you wanted to invest in this, it was a real investment, and it was an investment in marketing. So is this going to pay out in the first year? No. Is it going to fight against Blue Bottle, and is it going to fight against some of the other companies that are now coming after us saying that we're just cheap coffee like Dunkin' Donuts? I'm sorry, I know I'm on the East Coast, I'm not supposed to say that. But that was something that I felt really good about. And I would say this was one of the hardest times of my career because A, we're meeting with Howard every week, which is not always easy. And then also, it was just challenging because we were working so fast. Like we pulled the first roastery together. The one on the left used to be a Volvo dealership, and we turned that, and it's a historic building, and we turned that around in 11 months. And that's really hard to do, especially when you're creating products and working with R&D and working with marketing and working with all kinds of other people. The one here on the right I put in here because this is the one in New York. And so I'd encourage all of you guys to go. It's super fun. And they have a great tea bar in this one too, which I love tea as much as I love coffee. But that's what the experience at Starbucks was for me. And so I enjoyed it. I think it was a company that has a ton of passion, but it was also a company that leads with emotion. And that can be good and that can be bad. But I was really proud to work there. And then I got a call from a friend saying, hey, there's this job here at Amazon, saying, oh, I can't tell you what the job is. I can just tell you that you're perfect for it. At least look at it and look at the job description and talk to the manager. And so I did, and I'm like, this job description doesn't say anything. I don't know what I'm going to be doing every day, and I don't have a burning desire to work in tech. And why am I the right person for the job? She's like, don't worry about it, you are. And so I leaned in a little bit, and I met with the hiring manager and just thought the hiring manager was amazing. And so I said, maybe it's time. I need to get tech experience on my resume, so I'm going to do it. And so I went to Amazon, and I led all the marketing for a product called Echo Look. And I got to bring and to create the first fashion influencer program that Amazon ever had. Now at Amazon, everything gets measured. So like when I show up every day, I get measured. They check my height. No, just kidding. But and so to do something like influencers, which for anybody that works in marketing, it's actually really hard to measure. To be able to sell something like this it was pretty amazing. And so one of my superpowers is I love to negotiate. And so I was able to say, hey, you're going to work with Amazon. We're not going to pay you the whole fee. We're going to you need to do this, and then we'll work with you again. And for those of you that knew me in college, I was the same way then when I used to sell my notes. But anyway, we did a really great Fashion Week campaign where we would have all of these supermodels saying to the device, Alexa, take my picture. And so as anyone who's in fashion, the biggest fashion model in the world right now is Bella Hadid. She's amazing. She's gorgeous. She's funny. She's smart. And she was standing next to me, and she's like, are you like the only cool person here? I almost died. But then when we got the picture of her saying, Alexa, take my picture, I was like, oh my God, I thought my heart was going to come out of my shirt. But anyway, so that was really fun. That was a very fun activation. And then we also did an activation with one of my favorite people, who is Rachel Zoe, who, despite some of the things that people think about her, she's actually a delightful person. And so we did an event at Coachella where we were able to demonstrate the Echo Look at the Parker Hotel in Palm Springs in order to just demonstrate what the device did and why it's important. Because if you take your picture a couple of times and you have two different outfits, it can give you style advice on which outfit is better and what should you do differently, which is pretty cool. And it uses AI and a bunch of other things, and so that's really cool. And there's also fashion stylists, which can tell you which is the best outfit for you. And then we did another influencer campaign where Rachel Zoe would use the Echo Look to actually style the models. From there, I got asked to go lead up small businesses and do all the marketing for small businesses. And I didn't know that over 50% of everything sold on Amazon was from small businesses, but I'll tell you, it made me feel really good here in my heart. And those were always the jobs that I liked the most. And so I don't understand a lot of the small businesses, but every time I talk to them, like the amount of work that goes into them, and I don't know how many of you in here sell on Amazon. I don't know how many people in here are small businesses or have a small business, but it is really hard work. And so it's now my passion to make sure that Amazon makes that easier, that we don't always just provide a platform, but we offer help and that we offer marketing and things to let people be able to make a living. I mean, you know, whether it's that you want to work 3 hours a day or whether you want to work 10 hours a day, that you have the opportunity to achieve whatever your goals are. And so that's what my current job is right now. And so I've been in that role for about 5 months, and we've got some really cool things coming that unfortunately I wish I could talk about that I can't, but I had some pretty cool meetings today. So anyway, I'm gonna stop there. I really appreciate everybody's attention. You guys were great. I think I'm probably way over time, but I know there's also a little bit of time left in for folks to ask me questions, and so I'm happy to do that. But again, I just wanna thank you for the offer to be here. Thanks for the introduction and for being my best friend. And thanks everybody for coming.